Guys, I have a bit of a confession to make here. These are a set of tubeless ready wheels here, some tubeless tyres, but this person here doesn't actually know how to set them up. Well, it's a slight lie. I have set some up before, mostly through luck on my mountain bike, but I thought today I should find someone that does know how to set them up. They can show me how to do that and explain why so many people are raving about them, particularly for triathlon. Well, one person that has been trying to convince me to switch to tubeless tyres for some time now is Ollie Bridgewood from GCN, and he has kindly offered today to show me just how to set them up, as well as the benefits to us as triathletes. Right. Hey, Ollie.
Hey, man.
Thanks so much for helping me out today. I'm going to give you one of these wheels. Here we go. Say that. Right, tubeless tyres, tubeless setup. Talk me through the difference of that and, say, the typical Clincher setup that most people go for, and myself.
Yeah, well, the biggest difference is that with a tubeless setup, clues in the name, it's tubeless. You don't have an inner tube inside your Clincher tyre. Instead, the tyre forms an airtight seal against the rim with the bead, and then you also have sealant inside there as well. So if you get punctures on the fly, the sealant can seal the punctures. It's tech that came from mountain biking originally, but it's also the same kind of tech that you get on your car tyres as well.
So what's the benefits behind having this kind of setup versus a Clincher?
Well, there are several benefits, right? Now, they can, as I mentioned, seal punctures on the fly, which is going to be useful in any situation. But above and beyond, the biggest improvement, the biggest difference is better rolling resistance with tubeless setups. This is because you don't have the friction of the inner tube rubbing against the tyre, and also tubeless tyres can have a lighter, faster rolling carcass because you're getting that added puncture protection from the sealant inside. Now, I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of rolling resistance, but we've done quite a bit of testing, over the years and things, and it's huge. Like, the difference between sort of the worst, average, and best rolling tyres is easily the difference between winning and losing in a triathlon bike split. Let's talk about this in terms of upgrades. Like, would you value that over a new set of wheels? Yes.
Really?
Yeah. So if you think about if you shop around, you can get a good set of tubeless tyres for £100. Most wheels now that you get on new bikes are tubeless compatible. The wattage saving from switching to a fast tubeless setup is going to be equal to, and sometimes better than, the wattage saving you'd get from spending a lot of money on some fancy deep wheels.
So let's talk specifically about triathlon here. Like, what are the big benefits? Like, you've spoken about comfort, obviously that's massive on a 90k, 180k. What are the other benefits to triathletes with a tubeless setup?
Well, I think if we take the extreme example of like a long form bike split, like in an Ironman bike split, you're gonna, just for the same effort, go considerably faster. It might be a lot, it might not be much, depending on your perspective, but you could easily shave a couple of minutes off your bike split if you were to, go from a slow tyre to a nice fast tyre. Plus, what you can't quantify is the time saved from a puncture that seals. If you were to get a puncture and then have to stop at the side of the road and repair that versus being able to just carry on riding. Yeah. It does happen,
No, massive, yeah. If you typically, when you're in a race, you think you do it really quickly, but actually most often it's when you do it the slowest, you're rushing, trying to take a tube out, replace that, whereas this is technically, and it happened to me the other day on my mountain bike, it just started sealing as I was going, and that's it. I've maybe lost 10 PSI there, it's sealed so quickly. You might lose more in some cases, but you're going to get to the end of the race. It may slow you down a tiny bit, I guess, but you're not wasting minutes stood on the side of the road.
Yeah. And the other thing is with, if you wanted to put a number on it as well, which I think people do like to quantify things, to give the example of Pirelli with this TLR P0, they say that that's around 5 watts faster just in the compound and construction of the tyre over their 4S tyre. And then if you were to run it tubeless versus using a butyl in a tube, again, that's around 4-5 watts saved.
Wow. This is all sounding very good. I mean, are there any downsides to a tubeless setup?
Yes.
Okay.
Tubeless setups have improved a lot on the road over the last few years. You know, it's technology that's easier to achieve in mountain biking because they deal with lower pressures and wider rims. But the downsides are still there. So one of the things is that you want to get a sealed system. Now, in many instances, you find that the systems do leak air, like a latex inner tube leaks air, right? But you kind of have to know your equipment and know what it's doing. This has big implications in triathlon because if you're doing an Ironman and you rack your bike the day before, you get out the swim, you've just done a PB and you find your bike and it's like, tyres are flat.
I mean let's be, would they be flat, or is it like you've lost maybe 20 PSI overnight?
Yeah, so it comes back to, you've got to know what your setup is and how it's going to behave, because I'm using these P0 tyres at the moment on a set of Zips, on the new 303 hookless, and that system, that combo works really well. They really do hold air. But when I've used older tyres and older sort of tubeless rims, sometimes it's like overnight they'll...
But you're not going to, just in case someone's worried, during an Ironman, you're not going to suddenly have lost a load during the course of 180k.
No, and like you know, it's something that you've got to know how your system behaves and what it's working at. One thing though is that the tyres and the wheels have got a lot better in the last year or so, because there's been a new standard introduced, these ERTO standards, which is for hookless rims, which are kind of the next development in it. This means that the tyres and wheels are becoming, much more standardized and much more consistent in how they fit each other, which means we're seeing these better air seals on against the tyre and the rim.
Now, I've got to be honest, one of the big things that always put me off tubeless tyres is I was always travelling to races. And my big worry was, well, you've got to let out the air when you're getting on a flight, and then am I going to lose that seal, or liquid starts leaking out? What's your answer to it? Like, is there a solution, or is that actually just a bit of an issue with tubeless setups?
Yeah, well, in my experience, I've travelled a lot with tubeless setups to road cycling events, not triathlons, but it's a similar kind of deal. And I found it can be pretty messy inside your bike bag. If the sealant does start to leak out all over the place, that's not great. And then at the other end, it can be quite stressful if you're trying to then inflate your tyres and set them up tubeless, and sometimes it's a bit of a faff. Overall, if it was me, I would use a latex inner tube when travelling instead.
Now, this is all very interesting. I think my big question, because I've never set up, very embarrassingly so actually, never set up a road tubeless tyre.
You want to do one?
Yeah. Now, is there anything we need to do to this tyre beforehand? I think this has actually got the correct tape on the insides, ready for a tubeless setup.
Yeah, we can do that. Well, the first thing is to make sure that your wheel is a tubeless compatible wheel. Under absolutely no circumstances, try and set up a non-tubeless wheel or tyre tubeless. It could be catastrophic while failing while you're riding down a hill. So don't do that. But these are tubeless wheels, these nice Envies. And yes, you've already installed the rim tape, or did they come like that?
They may have come like that.
So you have tubeless rim tape. Not all rims require this now. Some have like a tubeless compatible rim without tape. But yeah, you've got the tape on there, and that's to help form the airtight seal and block off the spoke holes. One thing to be careful with the tape when you do install the tyre is not to poke a hole in one of the spoke holes, because then when you try and seal it, you've just got all the air rushing out of the spoke hole and it won't inflate.
Yeah. And then the other, so we've obviously got a valve already installed here.
Yes.
Again, this is to allow us to pump air in, but sealing that valve.
Yeah, so the valve's in here. This is I'm going to move that so you can see. So the valve, really pay attention to the valve. That needs to be airtight. That's a common troubleshooting area. When people try and inflate their tyres after they've mounted the tyre and air's not going in or air is leaking, it's usually like 9 times out of 10 something to do with this. So make sure that's on nice and tight and is sealed.
Nice one. And then in terms of other kit, what do we need? So I've actually passed it over to you there. We've got the sealant itself. So that's what we're going to be squirting into the tyre once it's on. And then we've actually got this little booster from Topeak, which I've been using for mountain bike. It's brilliant. So you don't need a necessarily compressor, but a compressor is obviously, if you've got access to a compressor, brilliant.
The reason for that is you often need to, when you initially put the tyre on, have a big burst of air to blow the tyre onto the rim and actually seat it. And to do that, you can get away with just vigorously pumping away at a standard track pump, but it's always worth owning or having one of these to hand, or a pump that's got one built in.
Right, well, should we try and do it then?
Yeah, let's go. Right, well, we'll get the tyre, and there is a knack to this and a way to do it properly that makes it much easier. First, most important thing, line up the logo with the valve and make sure you get the tyre on the right way. And then as I mount the tyre around the rim, you'll notice that on a tubeless rim, you have this channel in the middle of the rim. Now, when you mount the tyre, you need to slot the bead into that inner channel. If you don't, you'll find it very hard to get that last bit of the tyre on. So having put one side of the tyre in and made sure it's in that little groove, that little channel down the middle, I'm now going to mount the other side of the tyre and just work my way around. I actually find it easier to start at the valve on tubeless tyres, as that is the most difficult part to get the bead in, because you have the top of the valve actually sort of protruding into the rim. Well, when you get to that last bit, when it starts to feel difficult, just go round the rest of the tyre again, and you can see on both sides I'm just pushing it with my thumb and getting it into that channel, that groove in the middle, because that really does make all the difference. Now, despite me putting out all my wisdom on you, I am struggling with this last bit. Well, I'll get it, but it is quite tight. This is normal. Tubeless tyres are often a bit harder to put on than a normal tyre, because they need to have that slightly tighter fit to ensure that it's airtight against the rim. Right, but that's on there now, which is good. So the next step we're going to do is actually seat this with the compressor. So Mark, my beautiful assistant, you can pump up the compressor.
Should I...
So this is the fun part now. You attach on your compressor. I'm just going to put that there like that. Get the valve on. And then when I release this valve, it should just go and just pop and seat the tyre on the rim. So let's do it. You might want to shoot it. Now when the tyre seats on the rim, it pings into place. You hear like a loud ping or snapping noise as it gets seated. But then the next step is to actually let the air out, take the core out the valve, and then hopefully the tyre will remain seated with the bead against the rim, and you're going to inject sealant, put the core back in, and then inflate it again, which should be much easier the second time because it's now seated. To remove the valve core, just use a set of pliers or a special valve core key. A lot of multi-tools actually have them on them. But then you see we've got the core out. The tyre stayed seated, and now we're going to inject some of our sealant. If you're setting up your tubeless tyres for just like training and stuff, and you want added puncture protection, then you could put in as much as sort of 60 mils of sealant into your tyre setup. But for racing and pure performance, I'd probably recommend around 30 mils, which is about 30 grams. Right. So with the sealant in there, keep the valve core at the bottom, as if you turn it upside down, it'll just run out. It's a liquid. Put the valve core back in, and then I find just before you re-inflate the tyre, probably just give the wheel a bit of a spin just to try and circulate a bit of sealant all around, and then we'll bang in all the air. It's the unconventional pumping technique here, but I'm trying to get it on camera while it's still pumped behind a desk.
Right, sterling job there. I've got to be honest, it didn't look easy.
Yeah, tubeless can be a bit of a faff, especially if you've not done it before, and I've done several tubeless setups. Overall, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages massively, I would say. But, you know, do not do this the night before a big ride. Don't do it the night before a big race. It'll just probably stress you out, and you want to eliminate stress in that situation. Anything for an easy life. Don't have, stress is probably going to impair your performance. You're not going to get a good night's sleep.
Once it is all set up, should you now take it for a bit of a run just to get it bedded in? And
yeah, I often find that I'd probably just like run this down the street and just check it's all bedded in. That often actually helps create a better seal. And then not actually take it out for a ride straight away. Like I'd leave it overnight and just check that it's holding air and is good. And then after that, yeah, I'll go out and ride in it.
Awesome.
But then also take spare tubes so that if you do have a problem, you put a spare tube in.
But that's actually a really good point. We haven't covered that. So the nice thing is you can, if all else fails and you're out, you can just whack an inner tube in these.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good bit of information we can't miss. Is there anything else? There's so many nuggets of information you've given us today. But
yeah, tubeless. There's quite a lot to it. It's quite, but the lower pressure thing, when I was saying you can save watts by running, the tubeless tyre construction is often a faster tyre, but then also not running a butyl tube is faster. The other thing is being able to run at the lower pressure can, in many cases, again, save you watts, although that is harder to quantify.
Well, I think we have waffled on for long enough today, so I think we should bring this video to an end. If you've got any questions, please just drop them in the comment section below, and I'll just pass them over to Ollie. No, I'll do my best. I do know a little bit about tubeless tyres, having run them on mountain bike, but yeah, if I have any technical ones, I will come to Ollie for those. But yeah, don't forget to give us a follow over on social media, and if you want to see more videos like this, give us a subscribe just down below. And don't mind doing this one whilst you're here.